Welcome into 24/7 Sports National Signing Day week here on the YouTube channel. I am Blair Angulo, joined by Brian Dohn, National Recruiting Analyst at 24/7 Sports, as well as Tyler Calvaruso of Lions 24/7 to break down Penn State's recruiting class, ranked number 14th heading into National Signing Day, the third consecutive top 15 class for the Nittany Lions. And there's a lot of really good players here to like. Tyler, who do you like most? Who's your top player?
Starting under center at quarterback, Ethan Grunkemeyer really helped himself stock-wise throughout his senior season. I mean, it started during the spring. The Penn State staff gets out to see him to throw, puts an offer on the table, and a month later, he's committed to the Nittany Lions, goes on to the Elite 11 finals in California, as a standout performance there. And then as a senior, you just continue to see all of the traits that Penn State wants out of its quarterbacks. Good arm, he can drive the ball in tight windows. He is athletic enough and mobile enough to extend plays with his legs and get the ball downfield to his receivers. Penn State, this is three straight cycles where they have gone out and gotten a guy who has made the Elite 11 finals and not have just gone out to California and participated, but really shined when they got there. So Ethan Grunkemeyer is a quarterback the Penn State staff is really, really high on. He's someone that I'm high on in this 2024 class. And then lining up behind him in the backfield, Quentin Martin, one of the top players in Pennsylvania, a top target for the Penn State staff for an extended period of time, really going back to when he was an underclassman at Bell Vernon Area High, can do a lot of different things for you with his skill set. He had lined up all over the place in Bell Vernon's offense throughout his high school career, and specifically as a senior. He saw plenty of time in the backfield and went over 1,000 yards rushing, but also played a huge role splitting out wide in Bell Vernon's passing game and helped Bell Vernon win a PIAA 3A title. So those two, I'm really excited about their potential and what they can achieve in this new Penn State offense under Andy Kotelnicki. I think especially with a guy like Martin who could do a lot of different things and move around in an offense, Kotelnicki's a guy who could really play to Martin's strengths and really maximize his skill set and talent.
Yeah, for me, I start with Luke Reynolds, who tight end out of Cheshire Academy. He's our number one tight end, 5-star. But I remember watching him. If people out there are really familiar with the recruiting game, Ryan Puglisi, the quarterback going to Georgia, I remember going to watch Puglisi practice when he was a sophomore at Lawrence Academy in Massachusetts. And who was the other quarterback there? Luke Reynolds. And he was kind of a latecomer onto the scene because even as a junior, he spent a lot of time at quarterback at Cheshire Academy. Gets me to where he is as a senior. They brought in Dante Reno as a quarterback who's now at South Carolina. And finally, Luke Reynolds was able to just focus on being a tight end. And one thing, I don't care who the OC is at Penn State, and we've had some changes under James Franklin. The tight end always seems to shine. And Luke Reynolds is going to have to sit and wait his turn a little bit, but they're going to have to be really patient with him in his development as a blocker, but as a pass catcher and as a route runner, he's sensational. He's going to be able to get on the field and make plays. Hopefully, we'll see some of that early in the season when Penn State has some of these maybe blowouts against some of the lesser teams. But he can go get the ball, great body control, really good route runner, and he's tough to bring down after the catch. I mean, when he's got that ball and he's running, it's like a kid trying to steal his Halloween candy from him. He's just really aggressive in that way. And then the other kid is Cooper Cousins, who he is really easy to forget to be in this class other than his really high ranking because he's been committed so long, and it makes sense. I mean, look, he's a guy that is a top 100 kid for us. He's the number 2 interior offensive lineman, can play center or guard. He was always kind of ticketed for Penn State. A brother and 2 sisters went to Penn State. He's from Erie, PA. And for me, he can pull. He can, as a center or a guard, he's crazy athletic. He's aggressive. He is really physical at the point of attack. He can move bodies. He has the ability to scrape and get to the second level. And when you have a center, he's also really smart, but when you have a center who is athletic and mobile as him, it affords you to do a lot more in the offense. And like Tyler said, with the new OC who really likes to mix things up and get guys balls in different areas and create mismatches. And you never know what he's really going to do. I watched him a lot when he was at Kansas. I think when Cooper Cousins gets in there, I think he's a kid who can play as a freshman, and at least get some time. But when he's really entrenched in there, I think he's going to allow them to do a lot of different things just because of his athleticism.
Athletic, mobile, mean streak. I wouldn't want to steal his Halloween candy either, Brian. This is a class that's number 3 in the Big Ten rankings. This is the third consecutive top 15 class for the Nittany Lions. And in the 11 years that James Franklin has been on campus, he has averaged a number 15 class in the country. There are 16 of the 25 signees are blue chippers. Now, that means that they are 4 stars or better. But who are some potential hidden gems or players that the staff really loves, Brian?
Well, I mean, their staff recruited them all, so they're all of them. But I'm going to give you two that really stand out in some conversations I've had. Guys that they're really excited to get on campus. The first one is Malachi Williams, who's an edge out of Philadelphia, and he is long, he's athletic, he's got a ways to go just in terms of physical development and working on his technique. But Blair, he's one of those dudes that when you pop on the tape, he just flashes all over the place with his get off, with his change of direction, his ability to chase down plays. And you're talking about a kid who 13 sacks, 75 tackles as a senior. He doesn't get a ton of love because of where he plays in Philadelphia, Monsignor Bonner. But to me, I look at it and he's a kid that Penn State excels in developing, meaning that you'll be able to do different things with him off the edge. You can drop him into coverage. He's got the length. And then the other kid for me is Caleb Brewer. Listen, when you go watch his junior tape and he's playing tight end and D end and he can play offensive line. Now, they took him as an offensive lineman, but he is much like Liam Andrews in the class. He's a kid that if he wound up playing D-line at Penn State, it wouldn't surprise me. 6'4", 275, just mean, vicious, physical, finishes blocks, kind of guy that'll, block you to the ground and then just jump on you to make sure you're not moving. And after you play against him, if you're a defensive player, you're going to be sore the next day. And there's so much upside with him, and there's so much to mold there because of his transition from tight end to offensive line. I just think when I look at Caleb Brewer, and I know when Penn State looks at Caleb Brewer, they see a world of potential and a kid that can be an all-conference type player.
Sticking on the defensive line, well, at least guys who are going to stick on the defensive line for sure. T.A. Cunningham, it's rare you're talking about a prospect who started his career highly ranked as a potential hidden gem in the class at the end of it all. But that's kind of where he lies, given the way his high school career played out. He bounced around a bunch. He dealt with some injuries. And Penn State is really excited about what it is going to be able to accomplish with T.A. Cunningham now that he is in more of a structured environment, one where he doesn't have to worry about anything else but locking in, playing ball, taking care of what he needs to take care of in the weight room, diving into the playbook, getting his nose familiar with the defensive scheme. And, he's one of the bigger interior defensive linemen in this Penn State 2024 class. And really, if Deion Barnes can get him, in line with the rigors of playing on the interior in the Big Ten and everything it takes to play the interior of a defensive line at the Big Ten at a high level. T.A. Cunningham has got Penn State. He has a really, really high ceiling, and he could do a lot of good things for them on the interior as he progresses in his career. And then in the secondary in the Sunshine State, Antoine Belgrave Shorter is a prospect the Penn State staff is really, really excited about. There is playing time up for grabs in that cornerback room with the Nittany Lions losing Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, and Daquan Hardy to the NFL. Spring ball and fall camp, it's going to be all about competition for cornerbacks coach Terry Smith in that cornerback room. And Belgrave Shorter is an early enrollee who is on campus right now and getting ready to compete. He was kind of under the radar throughout his recruitment. He kind of played second fiddle in his own high school secondary with fellow Penn State signing and top 24/7 cornerback John Mitchell lined up opposite him. But Belgrave Shorter consistently held his own in coverage on a weekly basis. Really physical cornerback, can get up and press you at the line of scrimmage, got good ball skills down the field. So Belgrave Shorter, he's in State College, he's ready to compete, and the Penn State staff is excited about his potential and, possibly even potential to make an impact sooner rather than later.
Guys, we used to be able to look at a recruiting class and slot guys into different positions on the depth chart and know that maybe they were a year or two away. And now with the transfer portal and the way that things are working in college football, it's a little bit more difficult to make those forecasts. But is there an instant impact player, Tyler, that you might be able to see on this recruiting class that could see the field this fall?
I think Brian mentioned it. Cooper Cousins is a guy who could potentially crack that too deep and make a significant impact as a freshman. It's difficult to do so playing on the offensive line. It's a tough adjustment going from high school to a power conference, and there's a lot that goes into it. But Cousins is just a guy who's really nasty. He's violent, and he has a Big Ten body. So I think he can make an impact early on. I think Quentin Martin, maybe, depending on how things shake out. Again, another versatile player who can impact your offense in a bunch of positive ways. Then on the defensive side of the ball, I mentioned Belgrave Shorter, but I think John Mitchell could be another guy in the secondary as well at cornerback. Just given the playing time that is up for grabs. Penn State did bring in two guys in the portal, in Georgia's A.J. Harris and Florida's Jalen Kimber, but John Mitchell has the talent to contribute early on as well. And we saw it in Penn State secondary this past season. They started Zion Tracy in the bowl game against Ole Miss. Granted that was out of necessity with guys opting out, but he got the chance to play. He played throughout the season. Elliott Washington is another young cornerback who saw playing time as a true freshman. So the door is open for younger defensive backs to see the field for the Nittany Lions in 2024. And I think John Mitchell has the talent to work his way into that conversation and make an instant impact for Penn State's defense.
Yeah, and for me, listen, I've said this before, I don't believe there's very many impact freshmen out there. There's a lot of contributors as freshmen, but there's not very many impact freshmen. I mean, just because of the strength and who's at your position and all that stuff. So what am I doing? I'm going with a transfer with Julian Fleming, the receiver out of Ohio State. And this is not to say that I expect him to come in and catch 90 balls, because you have to remember, he played at Ohio State. He went, a lot of injuries. He's a former #1 receiver in our rankings, but he was a third or fourth option at best at Ohio State. Now he's coming to Penn State, where he's going to help that receiver room just be more mature, understand what it takes to work to get to that high level. But it also shows you, if I'm picking him as kind of a guy that can have an impact, it shows you where they are as a receiver group. And I watched them a lot during the season, and I remember watching the bowl game and listening to the announcers talk about constantly receivers weren't getting open. They didn't have guys to stretch the field, and they were pretty easy to cover in the secondary. And it was almost like, this was the bullet point the coaches gave them before the game, saying, hey, this is what we need to work on in the offseason. So I think Julian Fleming can come in. He's going to have 40, 50 catches in my mind for them to be able to contend for a Big Ten title. Luckily, with the 12-team playoff, I still think they can get there, but they need Julian Fleming to have a big season to help the younger receivers and while guys develop.
A lot of new factors. Brian, you mentioned the 12-team playoff, obviously a new look Big Ten as well. How does this recruiting class fit into the dynamics? And did they address those needs, Brian, in this class?
Well, I think they addressed a lot of the needs. And look, so Penn State, you mentioned before, Blair, they always have a top 15 class, and you don't get there unless you have a ton of talent throughout. But I go back to what I said again with receivers. They got Julian Fleming, who will have a year. And then they got Josiah Brown, a receiver, Peter Gonzalez out of Pittsburgh Central Catholic. His dad is the former Pitt quarterback. Tassir Denmark, a receiver out of Philadelphia. And I think Tassir is really good. I think Peter's a good player. I think Josiah can run really well. But I don't know which one of them are that stud, unbelievable, standout guy that can make the quarterback's job a lot easier, that makes the secondary coach or the DC on the other side of the ball say, man, I am worried about that cat. We better make sure we have a safety over the top the whole time. I don't, right now, I think they're really good receivers, but we're talking about trying to get to that next echelon of play. And so I don't know. They addressed a lot of good things, but I think they still need to work on the receiver room, which is, again, why they've extended offers to 80 receivers in the 25 class.
For Penn State, one of its goals every single recruiting cycle is stacking quality class on top of quality class. I think that's what it did accomplish with this 2024 recruiting class. I think I'm in agreement that it addressed most of its needs. Moving forward via the portal in the 2025 recruiting class, is there more that needs to be addressed? Yes, definitely. Wide receiver. There are other positions as well. But you look at quarterback, they accomplished what they wanted to accomplish there, going out and getting another quality guy in Ethan Grunkemeyer. And they did a lot of that across the board. They just added quality depth at multiple positions. So the stable, it's deep. That's what Penn State wanted to accomplish with this 2024 2024 recruiting class, and I think that it did. I think that this class helps Penn State continue to move forward and compete.
The 14th ranked class here in the 2024 team rankings. Penn State, James Franklin getting it done once again. Brian, thank you so much for joining us, as well as Tyler Calvaruso. You could follow all their coverage over at Lions 24/7, the Penn State site on the 24/7 Sports Network.